Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital. Welcome back, everyone, to the London Horror Movie Club. Our guest this month is someone who has seen a horror film world from all angles. Not only has he directed, produced, and shot his own work, including Island of the Blind Dead and an episode of the TV series Fragments of Fear, he also works on DVD and Blu-ray extras, getting to interview an amazing array of filmmakers and stars, and he's the founder of Worldwide Weird, which frequent listeners will know is a charitable film club here in London that showcases occult, underground, and unusual films. And in fact, Worldwide Weird has a spectacular event of its own coming up on the 6th of December, which we will ask him all about. But for right now, let's just welcome Merlyn Roberts. Hi.
Hello. Nice to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on. Now, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to ask first about you starting out in film. What made you decide that you wanted to make films in the first place?
I think like a lot of filmmakers, it's something that starts very, very early. It's maybe even before I actually watched films, I was making films as play. You would read a book, a comic book, and then you kind of extend it in your play and start directing your friends and that I think that's where it stems from. It stems from play as a child, and then finally watching films in the cinema. I didn't grow up with a TV. We didn't get TV as a family until quite late. So any sort of cinema experience had a big impression on me. It was like from nothing to films on a huge screen. So after watching a film, I would then extend on that story for months afterwards. So I think, yeah, that's where it came from. It was a cinema club. I lived in Singapore for a while when I was about 8, and everything was banned in Singapore, but in a private club, a little bit like we've had periods of deep censorship in the UK. For home purposes, you couldn't see much, but if you joined a club or you went to a private cinema, then you could watch pretty much anything. So it was similar in Singapore. So my parents would take me to this cinema club, and they showed all kinds of world cinema, but films that really were way, way too mature, too old for me. But they just took me. That was the babysitter was the screen, so I would watch a bit and fall asleep, and then wake up, and I'd be watching a bit of like Yojimbo, Kurosawa, or the Seven Samurai, sort of silence, like grass blowing in the wind, and then suddenly someone's head being cut off, and then I'd fall asleep again and wake up, and there'd be something else crazy happening. And I watched kind of a lot of high art cinema as a first experience, and then I've regressed ever since. Just getting trashier and trashier with my tastes over the years. But yeah, it was a lot of Russian cinema. I remember watching things like Battleship Potemkin, Sergei Eisenstein, and I think Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain. I was watching these films when I was 7, 8 years old, and but just moments because I couldn't comprehend or I couldn't stay up. So that was the entry to cinema, and then writing little stories and being encouraged by a wonderful primary school teacher, again in Indonesia. So.
Did you expand on those stories? You said you watched a little bit here and there, like when you wake up, and we can relate to that. I don't know if Lauren can as much. I'm a little older than her, but a lot older than her. But we would go to the drive-ins, and the drive-in theaters would have your PG rated movie and then an R rated movie afterwards. And that's for the kids to literally fall asleep out, during the first movie, and then the adults could watch something. So I totally relate to take a sleep, the movie's on, and the speaker was just in the window of the car, so you could hear it. They couldn't mute it for you. But did you expound on those kind of like the head getting chopped off, like those films with your friends, and like were you the influence for them?
Yeah, I would go in and talk about this film, but of course I wouldn't know the title of the film or anything. I would just say what I saw the night before, and then make up the rest. Whatever I didn't see, I'd add in the rest of the story. But yeah, like you just kind of brought back a memory of another place I lived as a child was Sacramento, for a few months, and my parents took me to see 2001 at a drive-in, and again fell asleep through most of it. It took me like 30 years to watch 2001 all the way through without falling asleep. You know, it's a kind of dreamy film anyway.
Mhm.
But I remember because it was open air, the space scenes had massive extension because once you went beyond the screen, you had the true night sky with all the stars. So it was like watching it in the biggest IMAX you could you could imagine. Yeah.
God, yeah. What's the first like horror movie that you remember watching, or that you remember that you watched enough of it to comprehend what was going on?
Well, the first one was quite an experience. The first one I remember watching, and I remembered pretty much every part of it forever. And it took me years before I actually finally got a copy to watch at home. But it was the Seven Golden Vampires, the Hammer film.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was kind of my, like, I was already into cinema, but that was the reason I became obsessed by horror films and horror cinema. And I think I was already into ghost stories. I was already into spooky stuff. But that film was the first horror film, and watched it in a very strange kind of in strange circumstances, let's say. We were on holiday. Uh, Actually, when we were living in Singapore, we went to Malaysia for a short like break, weekend break or something like that, and we stayed in a place called, I think it's called Fraser's Hill. Is a jungle camp that turned into a hotel up in a hill station, sort of rainforest, old colonial kind of resort. And this was like early 80s, and we arrived in the evening. My parents wanted to have a drink. Again, different times. I think parents would be condemned for that behavior, but they were like, okay, there's actually a video cassette playing. There's a few people sitting around in the lobby area watching this video on the TV, and videos were still quite a novel thing. And there's no idea of, is it suitable for kids or not? It's in a hotel. It must be suitable, So they went to the bar and they were watching me from the bar, and I was just sitting there by myself with a group of adults, I guess, watching this film, the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. And it's, by today's standards, it's tame, but at that point, you've got naked women, cauldron of blood, hopping vampires. The vampires are super scary. You might actually see one up in that corner. I don't know if you can see him up there. That's one of the golden vampires up there. And yeah, I watched it, terrified, but loved it. I wasn't crying or anything. I was just like watching it, loving it. And then we went to the room, slept. I had nightmares all night. The next day, got up reasonably fresh. We went for a walk. I'm trying to cut the story down because I know that we have time, but we have a limited time, so I'll cut it down a little bit. Into the jungle. There were jungle trails all around this hotel, and there was a path that said, danger, no admittance. It was closed off, and my dad said, "We'll go down this one because there won't be any other tourists." Again, different times, right? Nowadays parents are much more protective. They say wrapping kids in cotton wool, but yeah, it's all right. Bit of adventure for him. So we started walking along the path. So this is like 12 hours after watching Seven Golden Vampires. And I said, after a bit, this is weird. Like everything seems to be moving very slightly. All the leaves, the floor, everything was moving just slightly. But then the movements became more and more intense. And I said to my mom, stuff is moving. I said to my dad, stuff is moving. And they kind of looked, but they couldn't see what I was seeing. I guess I had better vision back in those days. And then suddenly my dad, his face just dropped, and he just turned to me and my mom and said, "Run." Right. And I didn't know what we were running from, but I just never seen my dad that scared before. We ran all the way back to the hotel. He went up to the reception. He said, "Can I have some salt?" And they looked at him a bit weirdly. They gave him a little sachet of salt, and he said, "No, all your salt, as much salt as you've got." And we rushed up to the room. My mum checked me. There was nothing on me. I still didn't know what was supposed to be on me, but I knew there was something weird in the jungle. and they went in the bathroom, and that's when the screaming started. And it was basically my mom realizing they were covered in leeches, and like I was told to sit on the bed, but my mom was screaming like she was being murdered. So I burst into the bathroom and I see both my parents there naked, covered in blood, just like in the movie I'd seen 12 hours beforehand. And it was really, really shocking. And I think that should have put me off horror for life, but
It
instead
went the
something
other
happened
way.
in my brain. It went the other way. Yeah,
I was gonna say
and
that's either putting
yeah.
you on one or two
Yeah.
paths.
And I explain it like I think I've heard this from other people that horror is a safe way of exploring real life trauma. And I think that was it was a traumatic experience, but it happened after the horror in the film, the fantasy, and somehow my brain used the fact that I'd seen this film that I realized wasn't real. I saw the film, but my I was already mature enough, or just my brain worked in a way that I understood there was a difference between uh, fantasy and reality. And yeah, I don't know. It's a very odd experience. But that was my introduction to horror movies.
Have you watched? I'm assuming that you've watched it multiple times since.
Yeah.
Does the memory of that trip with your parents like flash in your brain every time you watch it now?
I mean, the actual real memories are quite faint, like I remember those moments. I've basically told you the moments that I
Yeah,
remember of that weekend. I remember being in the lobby. I remember my parents at the bar. I remember walking in the jungle. I remember the reception, and I remember the bathroom, and that's it. Those are the
yeah.
moments I remember. But when I watch the film, I feel warm and cozy. It's like it's not like it brings back some horrible trauma. It's like comforting. It's like it's a childhood memory that is positive. And yeah, my mum had saved me by doing that old school mum thing of just tucking my jeans into my socks so no leech had got onto me. So she just did this automatically without thinking. We're going to jungle, that's what you do. So if you ever go jungle walking, tuck your jeans into your socks
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Yes.
thought
and
of that.
carry
Yeah.
lots of salt.
That
Yeah.
is incredible.
Mm.
What I'm curious as to, so that's a great. I mean, what a great start horror film, and like kind of and really putting you on that path to like enjoy it, because I think like you were mentioning, like a lot of people that are in the world with I love horror films, just fans. They had a point where they probably watch something like either you're going to hate it or you're going to love it. There's not really the in between. There's no one's ever like, yeah, I'll watch a horror movie here, and they're either gonna love them or they're like, no, I don't like them. And
Mm.
yeah, when did you get to the point, or when did you decide that you were going to start like the playing with your friends and like writing that out to like I want to actually go and make one, or I want to go and be a part of that world?
Um, I don't really remember the exact point, but a friend of mine from Italy, who was actually one of the people that opened me up to the world of Italian genre cinema. Like I only really knew about spaghetti westerns, and like I had seen Suspiria on a holiday in Italy, and I absolutely loved that film. Seen a couple of films, but I didn't really know much until I met these two brothers actually, and one of them at some point got a Super 8 camera and just started going around London with the Super 8 camera shooting stuff from his Vespa. And he was saying, I'm making a movie, but there wasn't a movie. It was just him shooting stuff. He was just in love with the Super 8 camera. And then I said, like one day, okay, let's make one, let's make a horror film with the Super 8. That's where it sort of started, and that never happened. It just like we kind of shot a couple of reels, we did some weird improv acting, we didn't even write a script, and then that kind of ended for a bit. And then digital cameras started to come about, and I had a friend who bought a Canon XL1 that at the time it was like a super cool camera. It gave you like a really good quality of image. When you look at the image now, it looks terrible. It's a weird thing with each generation of technology. At the time, it's wonderful, but it looks so retro now. But he bought one of these, and he was shooting a lot of documentary kind of art. He was making art films. I think he was doing an art degree, and basically I thought, well, this camera's a bet, it's better than a Super 8. You don't need to send stuff off to a laboratory. You can just shoot stuff and look at it on your TV. So that was it. That was the point where I said, okay, I'm going to start doing this, but I need to get a camera. So I persuaded my dad to help me out, and we got a camera. So I guess this was like 1997, maybe 98. I can't remember, something like that, when it really started. And then I messed around and I kind of just shot without scripts. I really didn't know what I was doing. And then there wasn't a filmmaking community that I knew of at that time. It obviously existed, but the internet hadn't developed to the level it has today, where you can meet people so easily. Yeah, so I kind of experimented, and then I started shooting a film which was kind of a Little Shop of Horrors type story, but set in Hackney in Dalston. So it was like this. It was like a professor that had come back from Borneo or somewhere. A lot of my early stories as a kid started with professors in Borneo or Sumatra, because of the Indonesian experience as a child. I think that was another thing. Indonesia and India combined with Hammer films, sort of gothic horror, and India and Indonesia with all the mythology and strange mysticism and so on. These things kind of have given me my horror identity when I come to write something. Or I don't think I've answered the question really, because it was a long period of messing around before I actually finished a film and made something that could be considered a film. So I think I've got about 6 or 7 projects still sitting on old tape that I never finished editing. I would just start working on something else. And it's interesting speaking to some filmmakers, because some filmmakers say, and even some of the biggest ones like Martin Scorsese, say they really hate the shooting process. They just want to get the footage and start editing. I was always the opposite. I loved the shooting process. I like making props. I like building sets. I like messing around with dry ice and covering everything with worms and visceral. I like getting up at 5 a.m. on this adventure. Everyone's knackered, organizing the equipment. I like that whole energy of the shoot. It's like going on an expedition into the wilds of Borneo or Sumatra. And that's what I was kind of doing more than actually worrying about finishing the film. It was just like the fun of shooting was the most important thing. But
what did you find? Like you obviously have definitely a broader um, interest with movies, being with the Indonesia and like Italian horror stuff like that. I think I've seen Suspiria. I don't think I've seen anything kind of else. Do you have a favorite genre of film that you like to watch?
I wouldn't say one favorite genre, but I have like quite a few favorite genres. And I think, like a lot of people, it is about the particular mood or the time of year that I might be in. So, and I go through phases. But my favorite genres, I would say, a lot of the Italian genres. So the Italian Gothic horror, the Giallo films. I really like those, and I like when they mix them as well. You get like sort of their gothic giallo, basically. I like those. Yeah, I like lots of dry ice and fog in films. So atmospheric horror. I like the supernatural. I like surreal. So I love David Lynch, and I love Jodorowsky, and any filmmaker that can bring dreams to life. That's the maybe not a genre, but a feeling, an experience that I really, really enjoy. I like a good drama, well-written drama, but I don't think it's the kind of, like, if it's just a straight drama set in reality, it's not the kind of thing I would be attracted to make myself. So the films that I watch the most tend to be the films that I would like to try to make. Japanese cinema as well. There's so many great, crazy, crazy films from Japan. Like Hausu is quite well known. bonkers Japanese film, but there's hundreds of films, and I feel like with a country like Japan, I've only ever kind of touched the the pinnacle, the top of the ice, the peak of the iceberg. I don't know half of the shit that's out there. You know, there's so much beautiful, crazy cinema. So yeah, and I mentioned Indonesia as well. Again, through some of the niche labels that we've got, the little boutique labels, we get a few films every year coming out. There's one of my favorite labels is Mondo Macabro, and they've released quite a few fantastic Indonesian films. Right now, they're just doing a re-release of one of their earliest releases, Mystics in Bali and Queen of Black Magic, as a double set. And I highly recommend both those films. They're just incredible, awesome. You just don't know what's going to happen in each scene. You know, it's just what your wildest dreams come true with those films. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Does the love of those kind of weird and unusual films, is that what led you to doing Worldwide Weird?
Absolutely. Yeah. Worldwide Weird came about as a kind of fusion of an early, like all the stuff I've mentioned already, but also like I caught the great Scala cinema towards the end of its days. The Scala cinema was a fantastic, beaten up old grand cinema in King's Cross, central London, that some basically kind of punk alternative, avant-garde young people had taken over in the late 70s, and they ran it till the early 90s, kind of fighting against censorship and just showing whatever wild stuff they could get away with. So they would do all-nighters there pretty much every night of the week and have Russ Meyer all-nighters, kung fu, gay cinema, slasher films, like all kinds of stuff, breaking a lot of taboos. And I got there. So there was that element. I was really sad when they closed down. They showed The Clockwork Orange. They got sued by Kubrick's team because
Oh,
he'd
wow.
withdrawn it. He demanded it be withdrawn. It wasn't actually banned in the UK, but because they showed it, and they would always show it under a fake name, but somehow that didn't work, and they still got sued. And also people were going to the cinema less at that time. Video was exploding big time. And yeah, they couldn't compete, so they went out of business. But in the last 5-6 years, they've had a real renaissance. Like a lot of people talk about the Scala. There's a fantastic book that was published by Jane Giles. I think I got her name right, but it's a wonderful book that has all the posters from the Scala Cinema. So there was that influence. And then I started to find out about cult film nights in pubs in central London. And I went to one that was run by a guy called Josh Seiko, called Cigarette Burns, in like a pub it was like a kind of rock pub in this area, the Mucky Pup, which is gone now. And he would show these crazy films. Films like I mentioned, Japanese films, and cult Italian horror movies. So that's where I kind of got the idea, and I went to other people's as well, and I thought, well, I'd like to do the same thing. And then this kind of thing usually doesn't last for so many years because sometimes the venues go, and it's difficult in central London to get a venue that will let you show what you want and also maybe not charge you loads of money or even give it to you for free. In my case, Worldwide Weird, I have a deal with the place that I show my films in, and we do it for charity. So it's a combined effort. Everything goes to Macmillan Cancer Support, which is a UK charity to support people, while they're suffering with cancer and their families. So it's a really nice thing to show perverse and weird films and raise charity, for a good cause. So yeah, that was the inspiration, and it's been 10 years now.
How do you like the just the planning of an entire, like you had mentioned when you do the filming, you really were caught in the shooting of it and the organization and all that. Do you have the same joy with Worldwide Weird of like the planning and getting everything ready to go, or is it just a lot of stress? Because I could see it being both.
It's less stressful generally than it used to be because I've been doing it 10 years. It has become kind of second nature. But because I do it in a pub function room, which is basically the spare room they have upstairs in a lot of pubs in the UK, it's something they have that they can hire out for people to have private parties and so on. It's a beautiful pub. It's an old Victorian Gothic pub, and it's filled with an amazing collection of pub mirrors, like produced as like promotion for breweries. So they've got this great collection. And Bob Dylan actually played his first ever UK gig in that function room.
Oh wow.
But because it's got all this vintage antique stuff in there, and like the original Victorian plaster work and everything. There's nowhere to put like video projector screens, or, you can't like put stuff into the ceiling. It would damage the ceiling. So I have to sort of set everything up from scratch each month. So that's a little bit, and my equipment is old and battered. So sometimes things are break, and other people use the storage facilities there. I leave stuff there, things get broken. So I've always got like rolls of gaffer tape and cable ties and stuff, just a little kit bag to fix stuff. It is very kind of DIY. It's not a proper cinema room. I stick up like blackout curtains onto the windows. It's very much about it being an extension of my living room. That's the way I see it. Like I feel at home in the pub. They're very, very like welcome. It's a family business. Feel very comfortable, and everybody that comes there feels comfortable. That's the whole thing. And we have people that have been coming for nearly 10 years, nearly since the beginning, and also people that just appear once, don't come back again for 3 years. They suddenly come again. Other people come for half a movie and walk out. And I don't know if it's because the film is too disturbing or what. But yeah, that happens sometimes. So it's a kind of mixture of what I experience at the Scala, where random strangers will come in and sit next to you in a dark cinema, and also a kind of like living room hangout with your friends coming over and just talking about movies. So yeah, it's an informal uh, social event.
And weirdly, you're gonna have a much more formal in a cinema event for Worldwide
Yeah, I
Warfare the
mean,
6th.
so like, I mean, aside from the social aspect and having friends around to watch films, I have also had guests, special guests over the years, film directors, actors, composers. And of course, like when they're there, I am trying to give everybody the best experience and take it professionally and make sure things run on time. I mean, one of the things that I had noticed going to other film clubs or even screenings, cult film screenings sometimes in cinemas, is things starting late. And that meant that people had to leave before the film finished, sometimes the second movie or whatever, because people live far away from the city. And I had some sort of self-imposed rules that I've generally managed to stick to, which is like start the film on time. If something goes wrong, quickly come up with a solution, play something else. Like the DVD just doesn't play for some reason. Don't faff around for hours. Just make a quick decision, change the movie, say, I'm sorry, guys, we've got a program change today, and do that. So it's not completely new to me to have guests, but what I'm doing in December is bigger in the sense that I'm bringing guests from abroad, because normally my guests would be based in London or they would be based in the Greater London area, so that the expense of bringing people to the event, especially as it's a non-profit making event, is not so high. But with this 10th anniversary kind of special event that I'm doing in the cinema, in the Lumiere cinema, I'm able in this case to bring guests from Italy and from Turkey, because I'm charging tickets for their Q&As. Basically, essentially, people are going to come to enjoy some very in-depth Q&As. They're going to be career covering, hour, maybe up to an hour long Q&As. So.
And is this the first time that you've had Q&As like that, or is it just the first time from overseas or from out of
Yeah, so
the London area?
the two first time things are that it's the first time in a cinema, proper cinema, and it's the first time that they are guests that essentially have to be flown in, and all the kind of logistical side
Yeah.
of that is more demanding. But yeah, apart from that, the format is exactly the same as I've been doing for 10 years in the pub. So I always do a Q&A when I have a guest. Usually there's a little signing table. Sometimes they have a book that they've just come out with, or maybe just posters, or sometimes they don't bring anything and fans just come and get stuff signed.
Amazing. Would you mind, for any listeners who didn't catch Asenna's interview last month, which I'll put a little link here if you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, would you be willing to share with us the names of the films and the people who are coming over?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for the 6th of December at the Lumiere Cinema, I am really happy to have Lamberto Bava from Italy. Lamberto Bava, in case anyone doesn't know his name, is the really, really important director from Italian cult horror fantasy genre cinema. He started out with his father in the mid 60s, Mario Bava, who pretty much, alongside Riccardo Freda, invented Italian horror cinema. Like, Mario Bava, Riccardo Freda, the two maybe pivotal names in beginning fantasy horror as we know it. So really important. Danger Diabolic, or Diabolic, Mask of Satan, The Twitch of the Death Nerve, which is also considered to be the inspiration for Friday the 13th, proto slasher. It's a giallo film, but a lot of people would say slashers are the kind of illegitimate child of the Italian giallo in some ways, maybe with like on a night out with Alfred Hitchcock and things get a bit warm and sexy, and then that's what a slasher sorry, a giallo became, and then a slasher kind of took from that. So yeah, we've got Lamberto Bava. His most famous films, probably to the mainstream horror audience, are the Demons films, Demons 1 and 2. The film I'm showing, Macabre or Macabro, was his first feature without his father, working alongside his father. So his first horror feature as a director. And I mentioned he'd worked as an AD for 20 years before that. But after Macabre, then he also went to work with Dario Argento, like pretty much straight after Macabre, on the film Tenebrae, doing first AD work with him. He worked with Ruggero Deodato on The Last Cannibal World. Was supposed to work on Cannibal Holocaust, but I think he was working on his own film at that point, Blast Fighter, which is kind of Mad Max type post-apocalyptic action film. The great thing about following the Italian directors of that period, if you have a director that you particularly like, you get to experience their work in every genre. So each one of them will do a couple of science fiction films, horror films, fantasy films. Ruggero Deodato, who did Cannibal Holocaust, also made kids films. And he was most proud of his kids' movies, and also a film called Barbarians, which was the first of his films that I saw. I won Barbarians, which was a kind of Conan knockoff. Just absolutely loved all those kind of fantasy barbarian films at the time. So that's, Lamberto Bava is deeply part of not just Italian genre history, but like world genre history. Pretty much any director you could imagine in fantasy and horror worldwide would be very familiar with his work. So very, very excited to have him. He's like a kind of grandmaster of, in Italian, they call these people maestro, master of that world. So we've got him. And then we have Margie Newton. Margie Newton is just a wonderful, wonderful person. Like I met her in June this year. It was her first time making convention appearance anywhere in the world. She came to Weird Worcester, which was organized by Treasured Films, and she was one of a really packed kind of guest list. I think they had 14 big guests, and she was one of them. And I just thought it was pretty crazy that she'd never done a convention, because she's this great personality who had starred in a bunch of films, like Lamberto Bava as a director. Margie Newton sort of did a bit of everything over a relatively short period. I mean, her career was, I think, just over 10 years. She was in Hercules films. She was in, post-apocalyptic films like The Last Executioner. She was in a Vietnam War film called The Last Hunter. And she was in the film that I'm going to show, which is either called Zombie Creeping Flesh or Hell of the Living Dead or Virus. It's got like, these films have so many titles. But she has a great turn in that film, and that film is a fantastic, basically rip-off or reimagining of Dawn of the Dead. But it's just so much fun. It's like a really, really good ride. So yeah, she'll be with us. And the third big guest, because we've got some other people coming as well, but the third big guest is Can Evrenol, who is from a totally different world in some ways. Like, he's not from Italy, he's from Turkey. And he's younger. His career is very much still fully active, and he's got films coming out all the time at the moment. I mean, he's really kind of on a roll, but he would be most familiar to horror fans for his film, which is now 10 years old, called Baskin, which is a really imaginative kind of descent to hell type film. Takes you on a really nightmarish journey. I don't know if you haven't seen Baskin, you have to check it out. It's great.
I will definitely.
So I kind of had seen some of his short movies. I watched the short movie Baskin, and then eventually like got really excited when I heard he was making a feature. So I've kind of been following his career for the last nearly 15 years. And yeah, Sayara kind of took his career in a new direction. Most of his films had been, I would say, more on the fantasy side of horror, whereas Sayara is very, very grounded in reality. It is a controversial topic. It might generate some controversy at our screening. I don't know. It's essentially, I'm not giving any spoilers away, but it is a feminist story. It is very much condemning femicide and difficult, very big and difficult topics. But obviously it is controversial, I suppose, for many, that it's coming from a male viewpoint. So some people argue, like, how can a male make a feminist story? But I would argue that that's a bit ridiculous if you understand what feminism really is about. But yeah, it's different. It's different. It's very horror. It's not like, how can I say, it's not highbrow, but it's got a lot to say. So I've always liked to make Worldwide Weird as eclectic as possible, and have a balance in the offering. So that's why we're not going only for directors. We've got an actor. We want to hear her story. It's very nice that both of those guests, like Lamberto and Margie, are from the Italian genre, so we can hear an actor's voice, a director's voice. And then Can Evrenol is also very influenced by Italian cinema. When he was growing up, he loved Lucio Fulci is one of his big inspirations. So there is a connection there. He, of course, also loves Lamberto Bava. He's a big Demons fan, and he's very excited about meeting Lamberto. So yeah, those are the main guests. But we also have a book launch, a book called Cannibal Worlds. Eugenio Ercolani wrote it and also compiled some additional interviews. It's being published by Pulse Books from France, and it's basically the last word on the Italian cannibal genre. So it covers every detail, pictures that you've never seen before. It's like hundreds of pages long. It's a massive book. I think 13, 14 major previously unpublished interviews with stars, composers, directors from that genre. And I've got a chapter in the book where I talk about the kind of real history of ethno-cannibalism. So, yeah.
What is ethno-cannibalism? I'm not smart enough
Basically,
to.
cannibalism, not as like someone like Jeffrey Dahmer or I don't know, other serial killers, not somebody
Yeah.
that just goes out and eats people because of their own desires, but where it's part of the culture of a
Okay.
group.
Okay.
So tribal culture, tribal. So those Italian films are always focusing on the idea there is a tribe. For some reason, a group of Westerners end up meeting this tribe and they get eaten. And the reason they get eaten is because that's what that tribe does. So my chapter is saying, did that really happen? Does that really happen? What's the basis in reality of the tribes that are portrayed in these Italian movies?
Interesting. Yeah.
That's very cool history.
Mm.
And how did you end up writing about that?
Well, I've been friends with Eugenio Ercolani for a few years, and I started working with him, filming some interviews for Blu-ray releases. And we just got talking about writing, and he knows that I like writing as well. And yeah, it just came up in conversation one day. He said, I've got this book I'm working on cannibal movies. Would you like to be involved? And I said, yes. I always say yes nowadays and then think, oh, shit, you know?
That seems to be a main feature with, especially in independent horror world, that I've talked with Lauren and Tony and Asina, and it's just like, say yes and then figure it all out afterwards.
Mhm.
Like if you love it, just say yes and then it'll work itself out. Figure out a way to do it.
I think when I went through that long period of my life where I wanted to make films, but I didn't really make films, I just fiddled around with cameras and so on. I think I suffered from a bit of imposter syndrome, bit of fear. Oh, you know, I'm not trained to do this. And then you just meet people along the way that inspire you with their sort of get up and go attitude. And it's not like, oh, if they can do it, anybody can do it. It's not that. It's just that actually maybe I can do it, you know. It's like, and then you do it and you've done it, so then you do it again. But until you've taken that first step and done it and made mistakes, because I think on every single film that comes out there are people make mistakes, and that's why we have editors to
Thank God.
to help us out with those mistakes. But you know, we learn, and it's a never-ending learning process, and you just have to start that journey and be a little bit fearless and a bit naive and say yes to everything and then work out how to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me going back a little bit. You mentioned you've been doing the interviews for Blu-rays and things like that. How do you find that experience? Because a lot of the films I know were ones you've maybe seen 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and then they're getting re-released as opposed to just the newer ones. How do you find that experience as a horror fan?
Okay, so you mean the fact that these films are coming out again?
Yeah, and
Or
getting
yeah.
rediscovered by new audiences and that you get to play a part in that.
Oh, it's just super exciting. It's just amazing. Sometimes these are films that I struggled for years to even see, or to see a copy that would be watchable, and to have them now coming out with these beautiful packages with, you know, artists that have spent 30 years doing this, like Graham Humphreys, for example. And then you've got the soundtrack of it, and you've got all these people that are as passionate as you, but with even more knowledge, doing great commentaries and interviews and digging in deeper and deeper, and opening all these kind of windows of knowledge and taking you into new journeys, like, oh, is that really connected to that? Or I didn't know that that director did this as well. So it's just this exciting, never-ending journey of the voyage of discovery about these films. And sometimes you experience the film as a completely isolated thing, and you didn't realize that it was part of something else. You know, like I mentioned before, people didn't know that Diodato might not know that Diodato did some kids movies, or or whatever, and you might watch them and actually enjoy the kids movie as much as you enjoyed the horror stuff. So yeah, it's like opening the assorted box of chocolates endlessly and finding new flavors.
How do you feel about everything, or at least for me and being in the States and the people that I know, it's everything's digital. I mean, even I've gone from collecting DVDs and before that VHSs. I would just basically buy everything at a Blockbuster that was a previously rented movie. They put them down $4. I just buy like 10 of them at a time.
Hmm.
But do you have a preference? I mean, obviously with the DVDs and the DVD extras, and I saw your catalog of films. Do you like the physical media over digital media, or do you have a
Uh,
preference of one?
I would say overall, definitely physical media, because even before I got involved in doing extras, I love watching the extras, and
Right.
you could have that with streaming services, and I believe that some of them do uh, allow you access to extras when you watch the films, but that's not generally the case.
Yeah.
And also it's the fact of going back, reviewing stuff. Maybe you're going to write something, maybe you're going to do a podcast like this or whatever, and you want to just watch something again to research. You cannot guarantee that that is going to happen with streaming, because streaming services just, randomly, it seems randomly things pop up and disappear, or you just can't find them again. Rights end, or oh, it's on Netflix. Oh, but it's not on Netflix in the UK. It's only available in the US. Or I feel as a film fan, it's the same as like if you have a book collection or your own music collection, as opposed to going to a library. Libraries are wonderful places, but you have to take that book back. And the next time you want to get it out, somebody else might have taken it out and they may never bring it back. So yeah, I'm not into stuff generally. I don't own a car, I don't own fancy clothes. I don't own much stuff, but books, films, music, yeah, a few masks and things like that. But those are the three things that I believe in ownership being very important. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm a physical medium
Mm,
girl myself.
mm.
I realize we're getting towards the end of the hour, and there were so many other questions I had for you, so we'll have to have you on again. But I wanted to make sure we had time to talk about the stuff you're working on now, as well as Worldwide
Yeah.
Weird. What do you have coming up?
So at the moment, I'm really not actively working on my own films, but I have been doing art direction for some other short films. So that's something that, I'm waiting for those films to come out. They're in sort of the post-production process often takes a lot longer with independent films. So I'm waiting for them to come out so I can start helping to promote them and also promote myself through promoting them. So there's a couple of films that I've done art direction on in the last year. But for my own stuff as a filmmaker, I'm kind of waiting until my daughter's slightly older. I mean, she's getting to the point where it's easier to do stuff with her than it was. She's starting to enjoy doing stuff together, and filmmaking is so. It just takes up so much of your energy and so much of your time to produce and direct and write a project. I think unless you've got lots of family support around you when you've got a young child, it's very difficult. So basically at the moment that's on pause. I'm still writing, so I'm sort of still compiling ideas, but I'm not like sitting down and working on a full script at the moment. But I'm just making sure whenever I have a good idea at any time of night or day, I write that down. So yeah, I'm just biding my time to work on my own stuff. I'm going to finish this big Worldwide Weird project December the 6th. Hope it's a big success and everyone has a great time. And I'll see what things are like in 2026, but I'm itching to start making my own stuff again. It's been a long while. One thing I'm quite proud of is I have my fantasy horror film Saruta coming out as an extra on a release of it's a release of Fulci's Conquest, which is a really fun 80s action fantasy film, again in the kind of mold of Conan the Barbarian. There were tons of films at that time that were kind of jumping on the success of Conan the Barbarian, but it's loads of fun. So for me, it's a great honor to have my film as an extra on this like super packed release coming out sort of by the end of the year, should be out. So
Who's releasing
great.
it, just so I can send people that way?
so yeah, so it's Cauldron Films are going to be releasing it.
Amazing. And the two shorts, can you tell us their names, or is that not allowed yet?
So the problem is I don't know what they're going to be called because they're still in that stage where things might change, things might be shot again. So I can't really say. Maybe if we do another one in a couple of months, I can update you on that.
That sounds really good. Yeah. And is there anywhere that people should go online if they want to find you for either Worldwide Weird or in general to find out what you're up to?
Yeah, so basically I'm old school. I'm not really using Instagram at the moment. I might change, but I'm on Facebook as Merlyn Roberts, so people can just find me personally there. It's Merlyn Roberts. And Worldwide Weird, we have a page and we have a group. And if you go to either the page or the group, you should be able to find the event Worldwide Weird, the Lumiere, but also all our other events. And next week, we have a really great event with filmmaker Tom Lee Rutter. We're going to be showing his pocket film of Superstition. And we're going to have a special guest who acts in his film, Caroline Munro, who will be familiar to anyone that likes James Bond, Hammer films, like everything. She's like an amazing person. And huge cult actor. So she's going to be joining us in the pub, and it's free. It's just come along. It's a raffle, prizes. We have like wonderful prizes donated by all the fans that come, and you can watch that, and then you can watch a great fun film with Caroline Munro after that. So directed by Luigi Cozzi, and my God, the name has just suddenly dropped out of my brain. Star Crash. It's just come back. Star Crash. I was like, where's that gone? Star Crash. Yeah. We were showing Star Crash, which rarely gets seen, but it's like Barbarella meets Star Wars.
Ooh.
Yeah, but on a lower budget, but still, yeah, good film.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So, and lots of stuff happening next year as well. But again, maybe we'll save that for another time.
That sounds perfect. Unless you have another question, Chris.
I don't. I just want to wish you luck on the Lumineer festival on December 6th. You guys it's coming down the pike. You only got like 30 days left, so that's hopefully it has a great turnout. Goes well.
Feeling the pressure now.
It's going to be fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on. It's been a lot of fun, and we will definitely have to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope it was entertaining and informative.
It was great. Awesome. I've got a whole list of movies to watch now.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. And thank you, of course, to our listeners. This has been the London Horror Movie Club. If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.